welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Tensions are mounting in the Baltic region after a brazen airspace incursion. Russian MiG-31s allegedly violated Estonian airspace, flying without identification or permission, prompting NATO consultations and an unprecedented UN Security Council meeting requested by Estonia. Latvia has joined a diplomatic protest, warning that such provocations risk escalation and undermine regional stability. Joining us on TVP World to assess what this all means is Sigita Struberga, Secretary General of the Latvian Transatlantic Organization, whose work bridges security policy, transatlantic cooperation, and regional defense. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So can you tell us from Latvia's perspective, how serious is this violation and how is it being perceived as a signal from Russia?
So first of all, I would like to underline that in Latvia we see it as not really one event happening, but we rather see it as part of a series of events, including drones attack against Poland recently, or Romania, for example. So basically what we see is this very challenging behavior done by Russia, systematic behavior, and rather we see that also different type of sabotage is done within European territory should be also seen as a part of this systematic approach which Russia has at the moment. So that's why Minister of Foreign Affairs of Latvia yesterday in UN Security Council underlined that we shouldn't speak in terms of Ukrainian war. We should speak of Russia's war and should underline that it is Russia's war against Ukraine, and it is about Russia's made challenges against Europe and in Russia's neighbors in particular. And this is the way how Latvia sees the recent events. That's why, for example, after drones falling in Poland's territory, airspace on the borders of Latvia and Russia were closed by Latvian responsible institutions, for example.
All right, so you mentioned this being part of, or perceived as part of a systematic approach, a series of events instead of an isolated incident. I'm actually curious about the most recent drone incident taking place in Copenhagen that kind of halted its airport. Of course, reports are still being done about whether or not this is something intentional, but how is Latvia also perceiving this incident?
I think it's too early for me to give any comments on this because we have not heard more details on this matter, at least in Latvian public space, since you asked how it is perceived in Latvia. There have not been much information yet. Let's wait and let's see for the reaction. But former events indeed demonstrate that it is a huge issue at the moment, and this type of hybrid attack should be seen as serious threat to European security architecture. Let's look back on other sabotages, and as soon as we will start to look on them from systemic perspective, we will see how serious threat is. Also, I would like to mention here that if we look besides of what is happening, also what are Russia's rhetorics, not only in, let's say, official announcements, like, for example, yesterday in UN Security Council, but rather put together with also other type of communication internally in Russia or externally by certain Russian actors. What we see is that about almost all the incidents, the rhetorics are same. So they are talking of at least three different versions. One is you have no proofs, and we heard it yesterday. Another is so you were supporting and you are supporting Ukraine. So get what you what you deserve. And the third type of narrative is that basically it's West's responsibility of what is happening in Ukraine, and that's why this might be accident, but it might be not accident. So guess what it is. And like at least three narratives I mentioned, but there are many more. So which also allows to do certain conclusions about systematic approach.
Right, like you mentioned, Russia is muddling the water with a lot of different running narratives and creating a very hazy situation around these incidents. Do you think that this is going to impact how NATO responds to it, or do you think there is already kind of a unified decision or at least same stream of thought when it comes to how to actually deal with this incursion?
I would be careful to do conclusions about very concrete decisions done or conclusions done. But what we see, the reaction from NATO has been, from my perspective, fast enough and strong enough. And let's remember that NATO, it is first and foremost about the member countries. And for us in Latvia, by the way, yesterday to hear Polish announcement about further reaction to any crossing of the border, whether it's drone or anything else, without that it will be shut without any further debates. It is very important, and I think it is part of the messaging done by NATO, since Poland is one of very strong NATO member countries.
And how does Latvia see its cooperation with NATO Baltic states, especially Poland, and as well as NATO as a whole, when it comes to evolving to and responding to incidents like these?
So I would put this question in two parts. The first part is the official reaction, and then let's say institutional reaction. And here I think there is certain success. Let's look on the new initiatives for guarding our airspace, etc. So NATO initiatives, and I believe it is an important part of deterrence. But on another hand, of course, we can speak about another reaction, which is public reaction. And here, of course, in a way, Russia gets what it wants. People get nervous. And not only in Latvia. The question is, what is further stratcom from both national level here in Baltics or wider in region, and then what is reaction from NATO in general. But basically, we are quite optimistic about the cooperation, whether it is NATO in large, or even more optimistic we are about the cooperation between Baltic countries and Poland, Finland, and other very, very like-minded countries.
And last but not least, do you think there's any policy changes, defense investments, or diplomatic initiatives that you personally would advocate for to make the Baltic region more secure against provocations?
So, of course, the first one is air defense. We have to work hard on this matter, continue to work hard on this matter. We do already best we can do. But also, I think one of the huge issues is conscription, and it's not only related to Baltic countries. We continue to work on conscription for young men, and I think this is an issue needed to be discussed not only in Baltics but in Eastern flank in general. But also it includes further debate in the long term of women inclusion in armed forces, taking in consideration demographic issues and also needs to empower women for being more resilient. Those would be two which are the most topical from my perspective with the work I do. But at the same time, of course, there are many other matters needed to be discussed further. And here, of course, investments in defense industry is one more, where we really need to discuss more about cooperation mechanisms and rather systematic approach and not really competitive one when member states compete for certain finances without putting it in larger system, the system which would be able to operate effectively. And of course, military mobility still is an issue, despite of the fact that there has been quite a lot done. Still, I just have to remind about such projects as Rail Baltica, for example, which is pretty much connected with this connectivity between, for example, Poland and Baltics, right?
Right, definitely putting everything into the same track to be a bit more efficient as well. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.